August 23rd, 2016, The Miz was being interviewed by Daniel Bryan and Renee Young on the Talking Smack post-show program that aired on the WWE Network following SmackDown for WWE. Bryan was the general manager of SmackDown at the time, during a period in his career when he was not medically cleared to compete. And during this segment, he criticized The Miz's wrestling style, calling it soft, saying that he wrestles like a coward. Miz was irate upon hearing this. He responded angrily to Bryan's comments and launched into a fiery tirade of a promo, defending his style and his lengthy career at that point. He argued that his so-called cowardly style has allowed him to remain healthy and consistent actively as a performer at the highest level for over a decade, unlike Bryan, who had to retire due to injuries. He dared Bryan to leave WWE and go wrestle elsewhere in front of the indie darlings in those little bingo halls if he was so dissatisfied with the mega million-dollar company he was currently in, and how people like The Miz performed at that level. He also called Bryan out for being unable to wrestle, not medically cleared, there's a difference, and implied that Bryan was using his role as a GM to criticize others out of bitterness. The segment felt real, it was jarring, and it led fans to wonder if it was legitimate or really just something that they took off the page and ran with it. Miz and Bryan do not like each other in this very real-life issue, and this segment blurred the lines between fiction and reality. It rejuvenated Miz's career and sparked fan anticipation for Daniel Bryan's return, which would eventually happen in the not-too-distant future from that point. Let's get into one of the most personal and bitter, storied rivalries of WWE in the 2010s. The Miz and Daniel Bryan are from two very different worlds in the universe of pro wrestling, and we're going to tell their story. Let us know what you think of Miz versus Daniel Bryan. Do we need one more match to really close out this feud between these two? Let us know in the comments below. I'm Kevin Kellum. This is Sportskeeda Wrestling. Mike Mizanin gained fame as The Miz, getting that name out there and entering the public eye through reality television, and gained fame as a cast member on MTV's The Real World back in 2001. His genuine transition into pro wrestling began with WWE's Tough Enough competition show in 2004, where he was already working on the independent wrestling circuit. He was the runner-up. Despite not winning, The Miz signed a deal with WWE and worked his way up from hosting segments on SmackDown to becoming a full-fledged in-ring performer and one of the most despised villains of his time in WWE. We did an entire career retrospective on him. You should definitely check it out on our channel. On the opposite side, Bryan Danielson, aka Daniel Bryan, loved pro wrestling much like The Miz from a young age, but took a much more arduous and longer path to WWE superstardom. He created his name on the independent circuit, honing his craft in promotions like Ring of Honor, where he was a legitimate badass world champion and kicked ass across the world, earning the moniker of American Dragon and becoming a big name in places like New Japan Pro Wrestling. His reputation as one of the best technical wrestlers in the world earned him a devoted following before he ever got on WWE's radar. He was already one of the best wrestlers on the planet before WWE recruited him. Stand back. There's a new wrestling quiz coming through. Check out BrainBuster, the daily quiz that tests your WWE knowledge with winning streaks, stats, and more. It's time to see if you're up for the challenge. By 2010, The Miz had established himself as an effective heel for WWE in almost any level of the card, while Bryan was ready to come into the company and live up to all that hype he had before he ever got there. WWE decided to launch a reality-based competition on the premise of NXT. Yes, this was the original version of NXT. Long before it had its own championships, it was a competition show that had a format featuring 8 rookies paired with established WWE names known as pros, who served as mentors to their rookies. Daniel Bryan was anything but a rookie in the eyes of diehard fans, but pairing him with The Miz, someone who is antithetical to his style, was interesting. The Miz was the United States champion at the time. Daniel Bryan hated the idea of someone being his mentor, let alone someone like The Miz from the reality show who wasn't, just really earning it. Someone who felt like the red carpet was rolled out for him before they, even earned the shoes to walk on the carpet. Daniel Bryan was bred bumping his ass in the indies to get there, and he even mentioned in his first promo, his first words on WWE television, that he wished William Regal was his mentor instead of The Miz. So the tensions were high from the get-go between the two, and Miz looked down on Bryan as someone who didn't have the look or charisma to be a superstar, prompting Bryan to rise with anger and showcase his emotions that brought out the best of his personality. Bryan often bristled The Miz's criticism, feeling that The Miz's success was more luck and less wrestling talent and fortitude. On his WWE debut match, Bryan faced Chris Jericho. Yeah, that Chris Jericho on NXT, and pushed Y2J to his limits in the first truly great match associated with the letters NXT. He was able to win the match, but that wasn't the point. He came out as a formidable competitor. He was truly a guy you didn't want to be in the ring with in any given situation, and tested Jericho. Miz was pissed at his loss and decided to attack him. Yeah, that's how you mentor someone. The rivalry had begun, and it became one of the most entertaining parts of NXT. Despite Bryan's reputation and undoubtable skills, he struggled initially in WWE's odd environment, losing matches and being further mocked by The Miz, the A-lister who also attacked him on multiple occasions. What was WWE trying to do with this very hyped guy? Break him down and then recreate him in their own mold? Yeah, it's something we've seen in the past. Bryan's time in NXT was not long, and he was eliminated way earlier than fans expected. He was one of the favorites to win the entire thing, but did not win any matches on NXT, leading to an early elimination. Despite this, he appeared on the following episodes of NXT, being interviewed by Matt Stryker. On the May 31st episode around this time of Monday Night Raw, guest host Ashton Kutcher booked a match between Daniel Bryan and The Miz. Yeah, alright, playing off of the elements from the other WWE TV show, and guess who won the match? Bryan. Yeah, in a shocking upset. After the match, he threw The Miz into Michael Cole at ringside. Along with The Miz, Michael Cole emerged as a critic of Daniel Bryan, saying he simply just didn't have it and wasn't living up to the hype he had before he made it to WWE, and trashed him at every chance he got. Yeah, this was heel Michael Cole. Things were about to change across the entire landscape of WWE in a drastic way. On the June 7th episode of Monday Night Raw, the Nexus would debut, a faction composed of NXT rookies from Season 1 who felt overlooked, including Daniel Bryan. They invaded the WWE ring, destroyed everything and everyone at ringside, and attacked the big dog in WWE, John Cena, wreaking havoc around everything they could get their hands on. The beatdown around the ring included Daniel Bryan choking out ring announcer Justin Roberts with his own tie. Now, WWE saw this as a possible non-PG move, and maybe even some advertisers were speculatively upset about this, and they decided this non-PG move meant that Daniel Bryan had to be let go from WWE for being too violent. Yeah, in retrospect, that's still crazy to say out loud. Just as quickly as he made his mark in WWE, he was out of WWE. The Nexus faction continued to explain that Bryan was no longer with them, stating that Daniel felt remorse for his disruptive actions. Bryan was a fan favorite anyway, so aligning him with the Nexus may have been the wrong move in the first place, but it was still exciting to see him a part of that big moment, that big attack scene that helped propel the group right from the get-go. The group went on to attack many wrestlers on Monday Night Raw, including Cena, Edge, Jericho, John Morrison, and even WWE legends like Bret the Hitman Hart and Vince McMahon. They were seeking to destroy WWE as they knew it, and they were monsters on a warpath. Now, if you're getting into this and asking why are we talking about the Nexus in this video when it's supposed to be about The Miz and Daniel Bryan, well, it's important to cover this part because this is a part of their story, because John Cena was forming a team to defend the honor of WWE and face the onslaught of the Nexus at SummerSlam 2010 in the main event match. The team consisted of Cena, Edge, Jericho, Morrison, R-Truth, Bret the Hitman Hart, and a mystery man who would make his appearance known at the match itself. The ever-braggadocious Miz, who had proved himself in the ring as a credible wrestler despite criticisms up until that point, was also the man who was holding the Raw Money in the Bank briefcase, allowing him to earn an anytime, anywhere WWE Championship opportunity. He announced at SummerSlam itself that Cena and his team had approached him to be that mystery man. However, when he came out for the match, Cena announced that he wasn't going to be the 7th member of Team WWE, and that he was replaced by the returning Daniel Bryan. The pop for Daniel Bryan was pretty significant. WWE understood what mistakes were made letting him go so abruptly and brought him back just a few months later. They understood that the credibility he had before WWE was still something they needed to cash in on before, Miz got to cash in himself. Bryan went on to have an amazing performance at SummerSlam and eliminated 2 members of the Nexus. He was also the final 2 members of Team Cena standing at the end of the night, along with Cena himself. What an endorsement right there. However, The Miz, who was seething from being snubbed, interfered in the match, attacking Bryan with his Money in the Bank briefcase and allowing the Nexus to eliminate him. This simply reignited their feud right where they left off, which was already an intense one that had no resolved situation from their time in NXT. This set the stage for a series of confrontations in the following weeks. Bryan was now a member of the Raw roster, and the two continued screwing each other over in their matches. The Miz received help from his braggadocious and also NXT alumnus Alex Riley, his protege from the 2nd season of WWE NXT. This led to The Miz defending his United States Championship against Daniel Bryan in Chicago at the Allstate Arena at the Night of Champions pay-per-view event. He managed to defeat his former mentor in a show-stealing performance, winning his first championship in WWE. The Miz, for his credit, proved he could hang with one of the best technical wrestlers in the world and allow his character work to propel the match to a new emotional level. The combination of Bryan and Miz was something special in WWE at the time. Miz, once again seeking revenge, wasn't done with Daniel Bryan, trying to win the title back, but he simply couldn't do it. Daniel Bryan was clearly the better wrestler. He went on to have a successful US title reign and dropped it to Sheamus on Monday Night Raw. However, despite losing the US title to Bryan, The Miz still gained momentum here. He was still red hot and still the Money in the Bank briefcase holder, cashing in that anywhere, anytime WWE title opportunity on a prone and vulnerable Randy Orton in December, winning the title in shocking fashion, his first world title of his career. You can criticize the WWE title run all you want, but you can't ignore the fact that The Miz winning it did it as the most hated man in WWE around this time and moved the needle in the process. He used underhanded tactics to win matches and made fan favorites look good as a villainous opposition. That's what you need. You need somebody you want to see lose when you want to see the other guy win. At WrestleMania 27, he headlined the show against John Cena as his challenger and successfully defended the title despite getting an injury and some wonky interference from the host of Mania, The Rock. However, he soon lost the championship to Cena and stayed near the top of the card for the rest of 2011. Bryan had moved to SmackDown after WrestleMania. He gained a loyal fan base with his wrestling skills as a technical wizard and his fiery spirit. Yes, that fighting spirit that was undeniable that brought him to this next level. He would win the SmackDown Money in the Bank contract at the Money in the Bank event in 2011 in the better of the two ladder matches and cashed in on The Big Show just moments after he won a title match that was very rough against fellow big man Mark Henry at the TLC event in December, turning heel for the first time during his years in WWE. It was just 1 year after The Miz won his first world title in WWE by cashing in a Money in the Bank briefcase. Now Daniel Bryan was doing the same thing on the same show. Miz fought in a different world title match, but lost. This allowed Bryan to show more of a charismatic side outside of the ring, develop his character as a little bit more of a gravitating figure who simply was more than the match. He eventually dropped the title to Sheamus at WrestleMania 29 in a oddly booked 18-second long angle that was more than a match we were expecting from the guy who has great matches at the biggest show of the year. Miz and Bryan were kept apart for a few years as they focused on their own individual careers, with Miz winning the Intercontinental Championship a few times, and Bryan becoming one of the more popular wrestlers in WWE, winning the WWE World Heavyweight Championship in an undeniably awesome fashion at WrestleMania 30. It was maybe one of the best WrestleMania main events, where he was denied by WWE's ruling class only for Yeselmania to take over. Yeah, that's a topic for a whole other video. We really want to get into it. But let's get it back to Miz and Bryan. They interacted a few times here and there, alluring to the moments they had in the past and maybe the unresolved issues they could have in the future. But the rivalry truly resurfaced after Bryan's forced retirement. On the February 8th, 2016 episode of Monday Night Raw, Daniel Bryan came out to the ring and delivered a very special farewell speech, announcing his unplanned retirement from professional wrestling due to unfortunate injuries that he had suffered in his career. It was an emotional moment, to say the least, and he was just in his 30s around this time. He was also one of the most popular names in WWE, irrefutably. The company decided to bring him back as a general manager on SmackDown to keep him a part of the mix. In 2016, WWE reintroduced the brand split between SmackDown and Raw. The Miz was the Intercontinental Champion at the time, drafted to SmackDown. As Bryan was an on-screen authority figure, The Miz was part of his active roster, and the conflict was bound to happen. The Miz was having some of the best matches of his career as an Intercontinental Champion, and he demanded respect that he didn't feel he was receiving. However, he wasn't booked prominently on the show. He complained about his status on the company to Bryan on the Talking Smack post-show on August 23rd, 2016, and it may be one of the best moments on a WWE post-show we've ever seen. With the show having little to no script, they were allowed to cut a little bit deeper than maybe what was allowed on the main shows of SmackDown and Raw. This got very personal, though. Bryan called him a coward and criticized his in-ring style of wrestling. The Miz spoke about his hard work and dedication, the sacrifices he made to succeed in WWE despite the critics, contrasting it with Bryan's career and his status, and told Bryan to quit WWE and go wrestle on the indies if he loved wrestling so much. You could see in Miz's eyes a legitimate, seething resentment, and that he meant every word he just said. Things got heated. Bryan had to walk away as The Miz yelled at him, later revealing in several different interviews if he didn't, it was going to get physical. Talking about the infamous segment on the Oral Sessions podcast with Renee Paquette, he said, "So we went on Talking Smack and he called me a coward. But when Daniel Bryan called me it was so different than someone it was saying it in a promo. There was something underneath it. I knew what it was. I knew where he was going with it. It infuriated me. I was still able to do what I wanted to, and he wasn't. I'm in there doing this day in and day out, and you're not. This was not intended." WWE probably had no plans to reignite this feud, but the segment went viral and gained a lot of fan interest. So WWE management around this time decided to go along with it. Over the next few months, tensions continued to rise between them, with teases of physical violence. Around this time, Miz began using Bryan's moves in the ring to mock him and gain a lot of heat from the fans. Yeah, those yes kicks became no kicks. You could hear the Daniel Bryan chants building in the arenas while Miz was in the ring. Fans were clamoring for Daniel Bryan to get back in the ring and be the wrestling star he once was. Yeah, and they were clamoring for it even more because they wanted to see him beat up on The Miz. But the knowledge that Bryan had retired through an injury left a sour taste in the mouth of fans. Unrequited wrestling love. Yeah, for an entire year, The Miz won and lost the Intercontinental Championship several times and mocked Bryan on many occasions. However, everything changed in 2018. Bryan was cleared to return to the ring and announced that he would be returning to in-ring competition shortly before WrestleMania in a very special promo where he declared the line, "If you fight for your dreams will fight for you." And his wrestling dream was alive once more. He teamed up with fellow SmackDown general manager Shane McMahon to face Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in a tag team match at WrestleMania 34, which marked his first match back in more than 2 years. Miz was on Raw at this time, and Bryan, who was the general manager of SmackDown, used his power to bring the A-lister back to SmackDown and finally give him the beating that he deserved. After The Miz returned to SmackDown, the rivalry was on, this time with physicality on the table, and fans could not have been happier. However, the payoff to this very storied and anticipated rivalry did not live up to the hype. A match between the two was set for SummerSlam. The two put on a decent performance, but it did not have the intensity to the match several years worth all of this hatred and resentment. It acted as an opening chapter with The Miz gaining a cheap, dastardly win. Because he's The Miz. Alright, we're going on the chase here, but still you wanted a little bit more bite in the chomp here. The second match between the two happened at Hell in the Cell, where Miz teamed up with his wife, Maryse, a fellow WWE superstar, while Bryan teamed up with his WWE superstar wife, Brie Bella, in a mixed tag team match. Yes, this wasn't what we were expecting, but it's what we got. There was enough personal animosity between the two power couples that WWE booked the Hell in a Cell match the same show, and that's not what happened. Yeah, we could have had a Hell in a Cell between Bryan and Miz. No, we got Miz and Maryse beating Bryan and Bella in an underwhelming match that just didn't live up to the standards of what fans were expecting in this very, very personal issue between these two superstars. The culmination of the rivalry came at the Super Showdown event, in which Bryan would win in just over 2 minutes, ending their feud. This rivalry had so much fiery heat that it deserved a WrestleMania match, but for some reason WWE decided to go against it. Not since the Invasion angle, which saw WCW stars come over to WWE, did we have a story where there was so much built-in anticipation that was simply not met, and expectations were not met here. Following this, Bryan would once again turn into an effective heel for WWE, winning the WWE Championship and starting his time as the Planet's champion, which was incredibly entertaining and proved to have some outrageously awesome matches with him at the top of the card. As for The Miz, he turned into a babyface hero in 2019 after Shane McMahon attacked him. With this, there was another chance to reignite the feud, with Bryan being the bad guy and Miz being the good guy, a reversal of roles. It definitely could have worked, but as Bryan had a great heel run around this time, it simply was just a missed opportunity for something special and a generational pairing, built over nearly a decade at this point. It didn't have an ending that it really deserved that the fans wanted to see. However, it helped Miz and Bryan establish their characters in WWE, motivating them to get even further up the card. Bryan's criticism allowed The Miz to work even harder. The Miz's comments made the fans rally behind Daniel Bryan and made him one of the most beloved stars in WWE. Despite the personal animosity, Bryan and Miz have a mutual respect for each other. Talking about the A-lister, Bryan said, "Miz and I dislike each other. On a personal level, like we don't like each other. Our wives don't like each other, right? It's the thing, but I do respect him. because he works very hard. He's also one of the best talkers in WWE as far as, like, if you were there has never been an opportunity where they've given Miz a microphone and all that kind of stuff where he hasn't gotten reactions from it because he's very good at it. He's like that. And isn't that how it should be in any kind of creative endeavor? You don't have to like someone, but you can respect the efforts they bring to the table. Bryan Danielson and The Miz are two very different kinds of pro wrestlers, two very different kinds of entertainers. Their contrasting styles and approaches to the art form of pro wrestling only highlight the diversity and richness of those that perform in pro wrestling. Will we ever get another big showdown between Mike Mizanin and Daniel Bryan? Will we ever get The Miz versus Bryan Danielson on that big stage again? Yeah, only time will tell. Yeah, Bryan Danielson may be winding down his career coming up here soon based on when we're recording this video. So let's just hope we get that match at some point in the future.